Hello, I'm Von Washington Jr., and it is my pleasure to welcome you to Township Connects, a program that hopes to deliver insights about Kalamazoo Township, its leadership, and plans moving forward for the future. I'd like to welcome our guest today. I have with us today Tracie Moored, the new Kalamazoo Township Superintendent, and Mr. Tim Tarantine, who is the CEO of Translators Consulting Group. Hello.
Hey, Ron.
Hi.
Yeah. Tracie, we'll start with you as we go into this. I mentioned a little bit about Township Connects. What do we really want viewers to take away from the program?
So we talked a lot about Township Connects and how we could reach out and help residents understand what the township's doing, how we're moving forward, and making sure that they understand that Kalamazoo Township is there for them and that we want to move forward with them and the community. And a lot of that starts with just us making ourselves available and making sure they understand that we hope that quarterly that we have a conversation just like this to talk about the different areas of the township.
Yeah, and in today's age and time, it's extremely important that we use all media outlets to be able to share the message because so many people are looking for information in so many ways. This looks to be a great opportunity for them to get that. And Tim, longtime friend and CEO of Translators Consulting Group, how do you come into interface with Kalamazoo Township?
Well, it's really through Tracie and her leadership, and so it's been years now that Tracie, and I've observed her leadership throughout the region, her leadership at the county, her leadership throughout the region, bringing people and communities together, and then now at the township. And so part of what we do just kind of matches the journey that the township was on, and so our relationship created an opportunity to see if we could help there too, and here we are to talk about it.
Mm-hmm. And that's wonderful because it all starts with leadership. Mm-hmm. And then that leadership we know is not alone, and it takes many hands to make light work. And with that, coming in as the Township Superintendent, what were the challenges that you thought you faced and why it was important to engage with Translators Group?
Well, first of all, when I started at the township, they'd been without a manager for about a year, close to a year and a half. And so when you look internally at the culture without that kind of vision and moving forward, there has to be proactive, out of the box, how do you make the fastest impact? So in conversations with Tim in the past, I knew that bringing him in and having conversation that he would help me move forward in facilitating some of those discussions with the internal team. And the board very much recognized that we had to invest in that culture because the culture internally serves our community. So we have to be running top notch.
Yeah, no question. And with that help, reaching out to Tim and Translators Group and the work that they do, Tim, we know that you have created the new Leader Assimilation program. Why did you think there was such a need for that?
Well, it's been years that I've been doing that with companies and organizations, and the idea is that when leaders like Tracie come in, as a matter of fact, when there's any shift in leadership, what tends to happen is you take about a year of confusion and then you follow that with about 6 months of game plan, right? And then the second half of the second year is lying till things fall apart. And then the leader finds out who the people are and what's going on. I'm joking, but I'm being honest about the toughness of transition. And so the assimilation process is not necessarily to get the leader to hurry up and become just like the organization. It's not an assimilation of personality. It really is the unpacking of who we are and who we can be together. And so we identify strengths in that process, and we get the new leader in one-on-one with key staff members, key stakeholders, to talk about who they are and how they're wired. How do we work together? What works for me because I am who I am, and what works for you because you are who you are. And then we get to also have a facilitated conversation about what we need, right? And a lot of times it takes 2 years to find out what an individual employee needs and how they're wired and what their real challenges are in the moment. Well, we fast track all of that process, and right up front in the first 90 days, we open up communication, we open up understanding, and then we allow for a facilitated, safe place to be heard, to be understood. And if you can move the miles per hour for trust in an organization, you move the needles for everything else.
Yeah, it's often been said we're going to move at the speed of trust.
That's exactly right.
And depending on how people are, and for new leaders coming into organizations, one of the first things on your mind is culture. How are the people feeling that were there before you got there?
Right.
And just how is everybody going to get in some form of alignment, looking at the new vision? And in many cases, we bring in experts. We bring in those that have experience, that have skill sets that they can impress upon our teams. So in this particular process, what stood out to you about the process? And during it, when did you know, hey, this was a really good decision?
So day one was my first facilitated meeting with Tim.
That's right.
The very first day, I'm like, if we're going to do this, we're going to go. And I think we went through 15 employees in probably 6 weeks. And the very first day, the thing that stood out to me is being able to listen. They really wanted that openness and that one-on-one conversation. So that was great. And I was like, okay, this is really what we need right now as an organization, is to be heard, and then to be able to talk about what great looks like. That was one of the first questions. What does great look like to the employees? Because I have the team that I have when I start, and I have to figure out the best way to communicate. Not everybody the same way. And when I really started saying, hey, this is really what we needed, was just a few in. And having those conversations was just realizing, as an organization, we needed to come together. We needed to support each other, first of all. We needed to find together the expectations. We had the board support because they had approved Tim's group coming in, which was huge. So we all knew we're here for the right reasons. We just have to figure out what that was. And when I knew it was great was when we were in spin-offs of those one-on-one meetings. We had group Friday strategies where we worked together to outline, we called it a communications calendar, where we went through everything a resident needs. How do we communicate that? What do they need to know? Because in that year and a half of a vacuum, I'll call it, everybody was just kind of band-aiding together and moving forward, and then what suffers is our communication strategy, our impact moving forward. So those spin-offs of that communication group that we had a specific Friday is when I thought, yeah, this is really, and we were only 90 days into that, and everybody was in a point, I believe, where they felt comfortable sharing that. Everyone participated, right? It's the participation piece. And so very early on, you could see the difference. The walls were coming down, and I still think it's only been a short time now, but I feel like there's that comfort level that we all know what's expected, and we're moving forward together.
Yeah, it seems like you're getting to that trust mark where then people can definitely tell you who and what they are. And, you know, I think people have always wanted this, but now it's articulated more to be seen and heard. And it can be challenging, especially when you have large numbers of people trying to get to know them and understand all the things that make them who they are and what will motivate them to do, you know, a wonderful job for themselves and for the township. So with that, Tim, I want to ask you, you bring the VIA character strengths profile into this process.
Yeah.
Why is it important to help people understand their strengths and for any leader to understand the strengths of the team?
Well, it's the superpowers, right? It's your strengths. The strengths assessments people take, VIA, Gallup, HumanX has a Talent 7. You got these groups that measure talent. And none of them are really magical. The idea is to get common vocabulary for what we need. The goal is to reduce the confusion and increase the understanding, increase the literacy about people. And usually what happens, particularly in organizations like local government where people are working so hard every single day to serve the citizens, the amount of regulations, rules, things they have to be aware of just for us to have an election is so much, right? But these people work hard every day, and sometimes you can get so far into what you're doing that you forget who we are. But the way we're going to be happy or not at work has a lot to do with who we are, not our task. And so you get lost in task, you get lost in service, and lifting your head up to not only look at your new leader clearly and safely, but then to have them see your superpowers right from the front. We're not giving them your HR file. We're giving your new leader the opportunity to see your wiring for what character you bring to the work. That is a fresh slate, right? And people come in when the new leader's there, the first thing I'm worried about is, are they going to find out, right? Who I am or what somebody else says or thinks or what happened before. And what we said was, why does any of that matter with Tracie? Yeah. With our new leader? Why wouldn't we attempt to start with brand new language that honors the dignity of everybody? No matter what your story is, no matter how you got to this moment that the new leader came, why can't we build new? Yeah. And that's what that's why you use strengths, is for language, for recognition of what makes each person special. And then for the new leader, it's gold. Yeah. I get to understand more about how this person handles conflict before I'm in a conflict with them. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I want that.
And in so many cases, leaders run from this type of opportunity because it opens them up to saying, I want to know about you. Mm-hmm. And then I'm going to use that as we operate and work together to an advantage of positivity for the whole organization. Mm-hmm. But getting to know people can be scary. Mm-hmm. Getting to understand what they can do well. Hey, we don't care about all that, just do this. Mm-hmm. Type of mentality makes it a challenge for many organizations, especially people-oriented organizations, municipalities, the type of work you're doing on behalf of the people. Mm-hmm. We want to know the strengths of those people. So with that, I'm interested to know, how did the strengths conversation go? What did you notice in that?
It went well. I think there were not a lot of surprises, right? It was just being able to share that openly. And then also, as a leader, sharing that with them. It's one thing for me to say, hey, I want to know about you, but I wanted them to know about me as well. So I shared my strength assessment with them, and we talked about all of them, or the top three and the bottom three, and how we're going to work together. And I think the interesting part about sharing that with them is they got to ask me questions about myself. So I got to give examples. I got to hear examples about them. And it really is just modeling that, hey, I'm here for the same reason you are. And we needed that rebranding of ourselves, that unity that brought us. We all went through that. So we all kind of got a piece of that together. And I do think it was just sharing together. And it was all the direct reports that did that, as well as all the administrative teams. So we had a good conversation, all of us, about what that looks like, and just the sharing back and forth.
Brian, can I just say something about part of the reason new leader assimilations don't work with leaders who don't want to learn? Mm-hmm. It's not for you. If you're one of those leaders who are scared to discover your people, this kind of thing probably isn't your bag. One thing Tracie has is humility, right? And that's something that's really important. A leader who comes in as a student and a teacher at the same time, that's not always the case. And I just want to say that part of the reason it works is that the leader has to decide that humility is the way. And Tracie did that, and so her people were able to be safe enough to engage in it fully. And that's not always the case. I just want to, before we think there's some magic beans in this process, no, there's some elements you got to have, and humility from the leader and a desire to learn their people is right there up at the top.
Yeah, a I know it all, do as I say mentality just is not a mentality that is going to get people moving anytime quickly. Get you to that trust line that allows for people to open up. But as a leader, you got to give a piece of yourself, right? You've got to come in and say, I'm putting my piece on the table as well, and then let's figure out how we're going to put it together. And with that, in municipalities, and we spent lots of years in education, so we had some of the same things. But you got tight budgets, you got scrutiny from all sides. You just have a number of challenges already personally that you bring to the table. So it's challenging work. How is what you bring to the table for leaders and organizations, how does that help them get assimilated and connect with their teams quickly?
Well, I think you got to honor people first. The first question in the process is, what does the township trust you with? And that's what's your job, not what we want, because these people are servants at heart. Right? And so sometimes an outside consultant coming in when the new leader comes, that can be quite scary. But we don't start with fear, we start with honor and dignity and letting people reimagine and think about their role differently. Wait a minute, this ain't my job. This is what the whole of the township is trusting me with. That's a game changer for the speed of trust. To just start with honoring people. And I think that start, when you start and shoot out of the gate, you're running a good race. Yeah. And that recognition first and the clarity of roles right up front, Tracie, you can comment, but I think that helped people step into the conversation with some confidence and with some aspiration.
Yeah. And when we think about people coming in and getting a role, sometimes we think, oh, it's just easy for them. They were elected in, they've come into it. But if you would, and I don't know which one it would be, but share with us, what was one of the hardest things just coming in the door that you thought you had to deal with, and how did working with Tim and the group help you with that?
It very much so was the culture internally, the internal culture, how to bring the employees together. Government so much is siloed anyway. And when you have leadership that has not been there to guide and encourage for so long, they start breaking off into additional groups and silos. So I knew, and like I said too, the board very much recognized that this investment, we don't sell product, we provide service. And if our people are not properly nourished, fed, and ready to go with that support and investment, they're not going to deliver the best service. So for me, it was, we have to internally get our team aligned, get it rebrand, find out the challenges, the opportunities, and the best way that we did that is through this facilitated leadership. And it was far beyond what I thought it would be. I mean, I thought, okay, we're going to have some conversations, but there were deep, deep discussions. There were sharing, and I met with the board one-on-one too, the board members. So it wasn't just what internally does that look like. I met with the clerk, the treasurer, the supervisor, because they have a role they play in all this too. They're part of that support system, part of our, we lead together, all of us as the organization. So I knew that was going to be the hardest part, just based on the conversations and things that were observed. I mean, we all hear from our peers and we know what's going on in some organizations, but you don't really know until you get in there. So I knew that was going to be the hardest and most time consuming. And that first 90 days set the tone for everything. And we really are moving through a lot right now. We have a lot going on. We very much acknowledge that the services we provide will be different than they were a year ago, and they will be better.
Yeah, and public service, it can be extremely challenging. A lot rests on the decisions that are made in leadership. And Tim, with Tracie telling us that it was culture, and in many cases that's it. And we pay very close attention to it, so it's culture. What is something that came out of the conversations that encouraged you while you were doing the work with the team?
Oh man, just how much people care about their job and take it serious.
Yeah.
These public servants, man, the people, the ladies in the office, I'm pointing my hands because I'm thinking about how they sit out in there together, and just the seriousness. But then at the same time, when you ask them about what they're trusted with and what they get to do, the joy when they actually get to do it. If culture is right, we got some public servants that are giving it up every single day for the residents, and they serious about it. And so to play a very small role in unlocking an environment where they can do that with joy and bring those superpowers that they saw on that paper, like that's the payback for us.
Yeah.
Yes, I mean, for real. They can impact their decisions, how they show up makes all the difference when a citizen walks through that door. And so to be a part of that is just special to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as we wrap up with our last question, I'm going to leave it to you as we go out. What advice would you give other municipalities that may be thinking about doing this type of work?
Don't wait, right? Whether you're brand new, coming into a new organization, or you have some facilitation needs right now, or employees you need that additional support and investment, because that makes the key difference to moving all the business forward, all of it. So if there is any desire to improve the culture within the organization, don't wait.
Yeah, it used to be a thought that it would take years and years before you could do that, but from what we're hearing, there's opportunities early and often for those who are willing to make change in the organization quickly. I would like to thank our guest today, Tracie Moored, our new Kalamazoo Township Superintendent, and Mr. Tim Tarentine, the CEO of Translators Consulting Group. Have a wonderful day.